If you are evaluating cloud security platforms, you are probably facing three persistent problems. First, your environment keeps expanding across AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. Second, identities, roles, and permissions sprawl faster than you can review them. Third, misconfigurations and vulnerabilities surface in multiple tools, but sorting real risk from noise is hard. This review explains how Tenable Cloud Security addresses those problems as a CNAPP and whether it is a good fit for your team. Start with what the product is. Tenable Cloud Security is a cloud-native application protection platform that unifies posture management, identity risk analysis, attack path visualization, and compliance reporting. It ingests configuration and identity data directly from your cloud providers using read-only access. No agents are needed for initial discovery, so you can quickly map resources, networks, data stores, serverless functions, managed services, and identities across accounts and subscriptions. The platform's foundation is a graph of your cloud environment. Every asset, security group, storage bucket, IAM role, Kubernetes object, and network path becomes a node and relationship. That graph enables context. For example, it is not just that an S3 bucket is public. The graph checks whether a sensitive identity can reach that bucket through a series of permissions, and whether the path is exposed from the internet. This is how the product prioritizes what matters over static lists of issues. Capabilities fall into several buckets. First is CSPM, or Cloud Security Posture Management. Tenable Cloud Security continuously evaluates configurations against industry benchmarks, such as CIS foundations for AWS, Azure, and GCP, as well as best practices for encryption, logging, key management, network segmentation, and data exposure. Findings roll up into dashboards and compliance reports you can export for audits or map to frameworks like NIST 853, ISO 27001, SOC2, HIPAA, and PCI DSS. Second is CIEM, or Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management. This focuses on identities, roles, and policies. The system highlights excessive permissions, risky trust relationships, and unused privileges. It recommends least privilege by analyzing actual usage patterns and the effective permissions a principal has through inline policies and group inheritance. In multi-account environments, it helps you consolidate or right-size roles and detect dangerous external access paths. Third is exposure and attack path analysis. The product correlates network reachability, identity permissions, and resource sensitivity to surface the most exploitable routes. For instance, a public load balancer, a compute instance with an instance role, and broad permissions to a production database are chained into a single prioritized risk with a clear remediation plan. This context reduces alert fatigue and accelerates fixes that meaningfully shrink blast radius. For Kubernetes, Tenable Cloud Security provides visibility into clusters, namespaces, RBAC bindings, network policies, and workload posture. It flags risky defaults like overly permissive cluster roles, containers running as root, missing network segmentation, or exposed services. Because cluster and cloud permissions intertwine, the platform shows how Kubernetes identities and cloud IAM combine to yield effective access. Shift left is covered via infrastructure as code scanning. Teams can connect repositories and CI/CD systems to scan Terraform and other templates before deployment. The same policy library used in runtime is applied pre-deployment, so you catch public storage, wide-open security groups, or permissive identities during pull requests. This helps development teams prevent misconfigurations without switching tools late in the pipeline. On vulnerability coverage, Tenable offers multiple integration paths. You can connect container registries and integrate Tenable Vulnerability Management or Tenable Nessus to assess images and workloads, bringing findings into a common exposure view. The benefit is a unified lens that correlates configuration risk, identity exposure, and software vulnerabilities, rather than scattering them across separate consoles. A common question is whether Tenable uses AI. Tenable has introduced ExposureAI to the Tenable One exposure management platform to provide natural language search, guided analytics, and summarization over exposure data, which can include cloud findings from Tenable Cloud Security. Inside the cloud product, prioritization is driven by graph analytics, policies, and context calculations that are explainable. This approach yields automation and speed, while keeping remediation guidance transparent for auditors and engineers. Deployment is straightforward. You create read-only roles or service principals in AWS, Azure, and GCP using provided templates, Grant the minimum required scopes and let the platform ingest metadata. Within hours, you will see inventories, misconfigurations, identity relationships, and initial attack paths. From there, you can connect Kubernetes clusters, repositories for IaC scanning, container registries, and your ticketing and SIEM tools. Most teams start with discovery, then enable guardrails for high-risk policies, then roll out least privilege projects by application or account. What about scale and performance? Because Tenable Cloud Security is agentless for discovery, it scales to many accounts quickly without deploying software to each workload. Graph calculations and policy evaluations are optimized for large environments with thousands of identities and resources. Role-based access control and saved views let platform teams share findings with application owners while limiting scope to their business units. Integrations are broad. For workflows, you can create Jira or ServiceNow tickets from findings with predefined templates and severities. For monitoring and response, you can stream findings to Splunk, Microsoft Sentinel, or other SIEM platforms. For collaboration, the product supports notifications to Slack or Microsoft Teams. For compliance, you can export detailed evidence and attestation reports aligned to your frameworks. How does it compare with market leaders? Wiz, Orca Security, Prisma Cloud, Lacework, and Microsoft Defender for Cloud each bring strengths. Wiz and Orca emphasize agentless depth and breadth of detection. Prisma Cloud offers extensive runtime protection and developer tooling. Microsoft integrates tightly with Azure native controls. Tenable's edge is identity risk analysis, clear attack path context, and the ability to fold cloud findings into Tenable One for a single exposure view across IT, OT, web apps, containers, and cloud. If you are already invested in Tenable vulnerability assessment, consolidation benefits are significant. Pricing is subscription-based. It typically scales with the number of cloud resources and identities under management and the feature set you enable. Because metering varies by environment, request a quote and a sizing assessment that reflects your accounts, clusters, and throughput. Pros include strong CIEM capabilities, explainable prioritization using graph context, fast agentless onboarding, and robust compliance reporting. Additional positives are IaC scanning that mirrors runtime policies and integrations that push findings into your existing workflows. Cons include that deep runtime protection may require pairing with other Tenable components, and some organizations will want broader packaged coverage for host or application runtime controls than the cloud posture layer provides by default. Who should choose this platform? Organizations running multi-cloud with fast-moving development teams, complex IAM, and strict compliance needs. Security engineering and cloud platform teams who value context-driven risk reduction will get quick wins from least privilege projects and attack path remediation. In closing, Tenable Cloud Security is a mature CNAPP option that brings clarity to cloud risk by unifying posture, identity, and exposure analysis. If your priority is to reduce blast radius, accelerate compliance, and give developers guardrails that prevent misconfigurations, it deserves a place on your shortlist. Pair it with Tenable's broader exposure management to maximize visibility and streamline remediation across cloud, containers, and traditional infrastructure.